Okay, so I have not seen anybody do a video on this, probably because it's really simple, but I was only able to find very scarce documentation relating to it online because people had other issues. But I have a 2008 Ford Explorer Limited with the 4-liter single overhead cam. As you can see, it's a little dusty, but that's what it is. So my issue was I have dual climate controls in the car. It's the automatic temperature controlling dual controls. I'll show them. They look like that. Get this out of the way. Those are my dual controls. So if you have the same kind of setup on your car, 006, I think it's to 20. I can't say for sure, but I know on 06 to 08, I know for a fact that's exactly what it looks like for the automatic temperature controls. So my issue was the vents would not change direction, so it would blow cold air out, but it would only come out of the defroster. The heat worked fine, temperature control worked fine, but the direction that the air came out of the vents, when you selected your feet or your defroster or straight on at you or anywhere else, it would not work. So through research, I found that there is a line that runs into the firewall on your passenger side in your floor well underneath your glove box. There's 2 lines that run in there. It's kind of hard to see them, but they're back in there. From those lines comes up, and it's this one right in the middle, right here. That's the one that you want to look at. That line is made out of a semi-rigid plastic. You can kind of see it tapers down. It's really, really thin. There's a sheathing around it here, but over here there's nothing. That's where mine broke. It's right here, this line right here. As you can see, the vacuum lines come off of a harness right here. It's kind of hard to tell because of the light, but where that red line comes out, that's to my EGR valve. The back of your EGR valve right there, that harness feeds the same vacuum system that runs the vacuum for your EGR valve. So you might show an EGR fault if you have a break in that line, and that's the vacuum lines that run that valve. So you might not actually have a bad valve, you just might have a broken vacuum line and not know it. So where do those run? Because it just kind of goes down here and goes into the abyss behind the engine where you can't see anything. Through lots of research, I found one person who had documented that, hey, I had a problem like that. And so here's where it runs. That over there runs straight underneath your intake manifold right here. This whole thing, it's hollow under here. It's like an arc like this. It runs directly beneath that, right next to your fuel rail, which you could see that little bundle right there. That little bundle, you'll see if you shine a light in there, is kind of a grayish connector way back in there. I'm trying to see if it'll focus. You can kind of see with a green wire right in the middle. That runs to a sensor right there. I'm not quite sure what the sensor is. I think it's a fuel sensor of some kind. Anyways, it runs next to your fuel rail right down the middle there. At least, no, that's your fuel rail over there. Well, it runs straight down the V of your engine. And it comes out all the way right here to this connector right there. And what you have to do to get in there to replace that harness. So mine, for example, was broken over there like I showed you, way right there. That little thin line, it was broken right there. It was also broken right over here at this elbow where it comes out. You can kind of see it, sort of, if you shine on it. If I grab this light again, you can kind of see the little bit of red right in the middle of the screen there. That's the rest of that red line that you see right here. Goes under, it's broken under there too. And it's this thin little cheap line that Ford decided to use. Well, that's what was providing vacuum pressure to the rest of my AC system for running the vacuum pressure to change the vents. So my flapper was actually good, which is rare apparently. The flapper inside those usually breaks, but this was actually, or I should say the arm for the flapper breaks, but this was actually the actual hose that provides the vacuum pressure. So I got a little bit lucky because I didn't have to tear my dash apart. So how do you change this line? Because there's a fitting right here. It's this one right there, runs right down and goes under. and zigzags and goes straight back and over that way. Seems simple, right? Except there's a connector, that connector I showed you that was back in there with the green wire, that has a connection that runs off of this as well. So this has one little connector that splits off and goes right there that you cannot get to. You won't get to it. Trust me, I have little hands, you can't get to it. You'll have to go, it goes all the way back, and then there's two other that goes to your EGR valve and one that runs your vents. So the only way to do it is to take out 8 bolts. Your 8 bolts that you will be removing. Let me walk around here kind of, I'll show you. If I don't drop my light on my head. So, the 8 bolts start here. You're basically taking your intake manifold bolts off. 1, 2, there's another one on the other side here. There's another one right down here. It'll become real obvious. There's one here. You'll see on the other side of this right by your EGR, there's 2 more there. There's a relief cut in between these 2 vanes right here. If that's one, that's kind of a pain. You really have to lay across the engine to see it. And then there's one exactly right there. I don't know if you have the same model year car of mine, but where your passenger side windshield wiper is, where it comes in, you have these little clips right there. It is literally between those 2 clips, straight down about, I'm gonna say 7 inches is down, right? And it's right there. It's literally in the exact pattern. You'll see it when you're in there. I heard stories of people, oh my God, I have to take this entire thing off. I have to pull my throttle body. I have to pull my EGR valve. No, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is loosen those bolts. Loosen them till they're completely out. Don't take them out of the holes. Just completely loosen them to where you can actually get and pull this manifold up. I was able to pull the manifold up. I took a screwdriver handle and I kind of wedged it beneath the manifold here to give myself roughly about 1 inch of clearance, and that was able to lift this up about 1 inch, which I was able to get my hand right to where that connector is, since it's right there. It's fairly simple. Those were the only bolts I removed, I believe. I disconnected the connector that it was hooked to just so I don't bump into it a bunch with my hand, and I took these 3 spark plug wire connectors off so that I could have clear access straight to it. You could see it, you can't miss it. So now, the $1 million question, and then you just reverse the order for putting everything back on. You can snake this down. It's very simple. There's literally nothing here. This is just empty space beneath this thing, so it just sits there. That harness is exactly the shape that you need it to be and everything. So back to the $1 million question, what's the part number for that harness? Because it's very, very obscure. It is this right here. And I got it for $29 off of eBay. Ford Part Direct, OEM. So if you ever want to see, this was the harness that I pulled off. It looks like that. So if you see a diagram that looks kind of like that, that's what you're looking for. This is the piece that goes to the top of your intake manifold. This is the connector that goes to that sensor, and there's your EGR connector. And mine would have had that longer connector going off, but it's hard to see. You can kind of see it right by my thumb there. That's my broken connector right there. That's my broken line. And it was also broken, like I mentioned over here, you can see. And when you're putting these I actually had 2 that I broke in the process of taking it out. That'll tell you. It's an 08, and I mean, these lines are brittle. The red ones actually feels very like it should. These other ones are very brittle. So stuff like that happens. I'll put a link, or not a link, but I'll put in the description below what that part number is. And hopefully this helps somebody else out, because I didn't see any tutorial on this. I was going to video this while I was doing it, but I wanted to go through it so I knew the pitfalls and make sure that my plan of just loosening those intake manifold bolts worked. They are torqued to 9 inch-pounds. Keep in mind it's a phenolic or composite or plastic, whatever you like to call it, intake manifold, so it is very easy to crack if you put too much torque on it. Don't go nuts. Get it about what if you don't have a torque wrench, get it to about what you remember taking it off as pressure-wise. It's very obvious. It's not a whole lot. And once it's on, go ahead and start your car up and then change your vents. You'll see it works perfectly. So hopefully that helps. Thanks.